Okay, let's look at some very early American history, starting with a papal bull, that is a edict from the Pope, something called the Doctrine of Discovery, and this shows up in our constitutional history as well. This goes back to 1452, and the idea was that if you discover the land, you get to keep it along with the people that are there and do with them as you please. And that's what happened to Native Americans, first with the Spanish conquistadors and then with the English. There was quite a bit of genocide going on, not just in the Caribbean and South America, but in the Northeast of what is now the United States. It was a capital offense if you admitted to being a Pequot, and you could be executed without trial. This is the Trail of Tears, something you need to know about, from the Indian Removal Act. And this is when President Andrew Jackson forcibly removed the Cherokee from their ancestral home and placed them in a forced march to the Oklahoma Territory. In 1823, the Supreme Court said that the Indian nations were not truly a sovereign country, although they were entitled to their ancestral lands. This is where the United States Supreme Court adopts the Papal Bull and the Doctrine of Discovery. And here's where the Supreme Court held that Native tribes are not sovereign nations, but they are entitled to their ancestral lands. Interestingly, Andrew Jackson ignored this ruling and removed the Indians and basically took their native lands. And it wasn't until almost mid-20th century that Indians gained full citizenship in this country. And of course, I've been fighting for Indian rights since 1958. Remember the Pequot, the genocide against them? Well, they're alive and well in Connecticut. And he who laughs last laughs best. They own the world's largest casino, Foxwoods, in Connecticut. There was also a lot of discrimination, as most of you know, against Hispanic Americans. And you might be interested in going to the PowerPoint and watching. There's a couple of videos about this. It's also a suggested topic if you would like to write an extra credit paper. The Chicano movement, that's in 1960s. And there were student walkouts in LA. And this is kind of one of my heroes, Cesar Chavez and the United Farm Workers. And my father never understood why people were not willing to pay an extra penny or two a pound for grapes if it meant that these people could be treated in a civilized manner. There was a lot of backlash against immigrants, this California proposition back in 1994, although it was held unconstitutional. We also saw quite a bit of discrimination against Asian Americans. This is the infamous order that interred Japanese Americans during World War II. And the Supreme Court in the Karamatsu case upheld President Roosevelt's actions. That brings us to more modern times, the civil rights movement as applied to the LGBT community. This was one of the first and largest acts of violence against gay people back in 1973. And there's a feeling, at least among the religious right, that these people shouldn't have rights because they're all going to hell. So the early gay rights organization was the Mattachine organization in 1950. You will need to know that. And you may have heard of the Stonewall riots. This was in Greenwich Village in New York City in 1969. And a little more recently was the Don't Ask, Don't Tell policy under President Clinton. This was a landmark case, and it's also one of the 8 cases that you can select for your research paper. It basically said that same-sex marriage is on equal footing with opposite-sex marriage. So today, marriage is marriage. There's Title VII of the Civil Rights Act of 1964, and it makes employment discrimination illegal. And this is an extremely recent case, and you probably heard about it in the news. This law, when it outlaws sex discrimination, applies to gay and LGBT employees as well. It also bars sexual harassment in the workplace and discrimination based on pregnancy. Title IX says that women's sports has to be funded equally with men's sports. This was a great boost to women's sports because now colleges had to provide programs and funding, scholarships, etc. People find more ways to discriminate. There are people who discriminate against an association with a disabled person, believe it or not. That too, in the workplace, is illegal. And of course, there was discrimination against people who were mentally disabled. This is the famous Buck versus Bell case. There used to be states that would sterilize people against their will if the state felt that these people basically didn't deserve to reproduce because of mental disability. And in the words of Oliver Wendell Holmes, writing for the Supreme Court, 3 generations of imbeciles are enough. And this eugenics program was quite popular in the South. And that's it.